Hey everyone, Ryan here, and today we are continuing our set review for the first Riftbound set called Origins, and we are going to be looking at all the orange cards and grading them like they were students in school with an A to F, depending on how good we think that they are right now, or realistically how good we think that they will be in the future when there's more sets in the game that are out and we can play with. But that's enough about that. Let's jump right into it. Arena Bar is 3 energy for gear that has exhaust, buff, and exhausted friendly unit. I don't really like this card. Yes, orange does want to get big beefy units, but doesn't really have gear synergy, and this just seems a little bit weak, especially that you only can buff an exhausted friendly unit. Maybe if it didn't need to be exhausted, I would like this card a little bit more, but I'm just going to start straight with an F. Yes, it's probably more a D, but I'm giving it an F. Let's move on. Bilgewater Bully is 6 energy for 6 might. While I'm buffed, I have ganking. Ganking is very, very good, but he doesn't come with it. You have to jump through a hoop by giving him a buff. Yes, orange does want to be buffing their units a lot, so that hoop might not be that hard to jump through. But as is, I don't like this card. I think that this is just a D because I want my cards to be more powerful on the base and then maybe jump through a hoop to make it even more powerful. Cannon Barrage is 2 energy, 1 power for a reaction that says deal 2 to all enemy units in combat. I do like my tricks or combat spells to be 1 or 2 energy. That's the sweet spot because that's very easy to hold up that amount of energy. And dealing 2 to all enemy units in combat is nice. 2 can really help, and it's all of them. So if you are going into combat with this, you do kind of feel a little bit safer. I feel like this could just be a nice solid B. It might not be as good as some other combat tricks that we've seen, but if you are playing those colors, this could just be a good one. Challenge is 2 energy, 1 power for an action that says choose a friendly unit and an enemy unit. They deal damage equal to their might to each other. You really only want to be playing this in a deck that you have a lot of mighty units, but orange does want to do that, so that might not be that hard to do, but that does restrict what you then want to try to kill on your opponents because this is a fight card. They are punching each other like these 2 pirates. And that does leave it up to that this is a little bit more nuanced because it's like, hey, I have a 7 might unit, you have a 5 might unit, fine, I'll punch that. Well, this isn't a punch, he punches you also, so it's a fight. But that means your opponent then can maybe play a +2 might or shrink your card, and then they trade. Overall, I think that this is good, that maybe orange decks will need to play this because they feel like they have to, but there's always more nuances and hoops to kind of think of or jump through when it is a fight. So I'll give it a B because I do think it's efficient, and especially maybe when we don't have that many cards, but the more cards that come out, I could see this maybe going down. Confront is 2 energy for an action. Units you play this turn enter ready. Draw 1. I love this card. This card is so cool. It only costs 2 energy, which is very cheap. So hopefully you'll get to play this and then a lot of either small units or just 1 big beefy unit. And if you just play 1 big beefy unit, it's basically like you just paid a accelerated cost on it without even paying the power for the accelerated cost, which is very good. And you get to draw a card, which automatically means that this just replaces itself. So its floor is not that low and its ceiling is very high. I think I'm just going to give this an A because I'm very excited for building around this card. Crackshot Corsair is 3 energy for 3 might. When I attack, deal 1 to an enemy unit here. That ability is good, not great. How often is 1 damage going to really kill an enemy unit? Very infrequently. Most enemy units, or just most units, have more than 1 might. However, recruit tokens tend to only have 1 might. So against a lot of recruit tokens, this goes up. Or if there are a lot of 1 might units running around in the meta, this goes up. As is, I feel like it's a C, where time will tell how good this actually is. The power level is a C. Maybe this will go up, or maybe it just kind of stays at a C. Dune Drake is 5 energy for 5 might. When I attack, give me +2 might if there is a ready enemy unit there. This is a nice, strong unit, but it's not doing anything else. So therefore, I don't feel like I can give it that high of a grade. I think I'm just going to give it a C. If you want this type of effect, it's good, but hopefully you can kind of do better with more cards, because after all, this is constructed and you get to choose your deck. First mate is 3 energy for 3 might. When you play me, ready another unit. The energy and might cost is fine, that's vanilla. The ability, I do like that ability. I do think that that is pretty strong, but it's only as strong as the situation you can build around it, which means that I feel like this is a very situational card. Sometimes this just might be a 3 energy cost unit with no text, and that doesn't feel good. Overall, at the end of the day, I'm going to give it a C. I feel like it's very situational, and you kind of have to build around it. It might not be super synergistic build around it, but you kind of have to. Flurry of Blades is 1 energy for a reaction. Deal 1 to all units at a battlefield. 1 energy is so cheap, but however, 1 damage is so little. I don't know if this is really a card that you ever want to be playing in your main deck. I think that this is purely a sideboard card. And even in the sideboard, I don't know how good this is. I think that there's going to be other good cards. So maybe this is a meta sideboard card. And at the end of the day, that seems like a good old-fashioned sideboard C. Mobilize is 2 energy, channel 1 rune exhausted. If you can't, draw 1. I do like the if you can't draw 1 ability, because if you have all your runes out, this is never a completely dead card. Yes, you don't really want to spend 2 energy just to draw a card. That's not a good card, but this means it's not ever completely utterly dead in hand. Overall, orange does want to ramp, that it's one of its like core color identities. So I do think ramping does get bumped up higher in this color. And I think that this is a nice, cheap, efficient way to do this. Nothing crazy, but I think that this should stay B. It's nice, solid, and if you are a ramp deck, you will want to play this. Cub is 3 energy for 3 might with hidden. Now, 3 for 3 is nice, so the Cub is a nice vanilla unit. Really, what is great about this is hidden. I only think you will want to play this in a deck that you are utilizing hidden and really a build around hidden deck, and those decks tend to be blue. So this is a very narrow type of card where it's only really going to go in a blue orange. In that case, I think it could be good. In other decks, it could be fine, and maybe you want a curve filler, and you can do way worse than a curve filler. So therefore, I think it's a C. Pit Rookie is 2 energy for 2 might. When you play me, buff another friendly unit. This is a good curve filler because it's a nice vanilla. It is a low cost, so hopefully you won't be getting run over because you have this in your deck. And then you do get to buff a friendly unit. Of note, it does have to be another friendly unit, so it cannot buff itself. So you really don't want to play this on an empty board where you have no units. I think I'm going to give this a B because it's so cheap and it's effective at what it wants to do. And I think it can fit into a lot of orange decks. Even though the power level might not be where a B is, I think it will fit the home and the need of what an orange deck wants to be. Stormclaw Ursine is 7 energy for 6 might with tank. When you play me, channel 1 rune exhausted. Orange does want to channel extra runes because it is a ramp color. However, I'm more keen and I like the cheaper cost units or spells or gears that have you ramp, because the later the game goes, the less important it is to ramp. So this costing 7 energy and you get to ramp isn't as good as something that costs 2 like we've seen before. Overall, this just kind of seems a little weak, especially with only 6 might. Yeah, it has tanking. Yeah, it has some other good abilities. I think it's just a D. I think you won't be that happy to play this in most decks. Catalyst of Aeons is 4 energy, channel 2 runes exhausted. If you couldn't channel 2 runes this way, draw 1. So yet again, this is very similar to the other one that I did like, where you always get to do something. Even if you don't have 2 runes to channel, you do get to draw a card, so this is never completely dead. I do like this. I almost kind of like the other card a little bit more because it costs only 2 energy, and like what I just said with the Ursine, I do like cheaper cards that have ramp because then you can play them on your first turn even and ramp, and that's when it's more important to be ramping. But this is only 4 energy. That is not a terrible amount, and you are getting 2 runes. However, I think that this has to only go in true dedicated ramp decks rather than just the, oh, hey, I'm orange, I wouldn't mind a little ramp. This is more tried and true, and I'm going to give it a build around be for those types of decks. Cithria of Cloudfield is 2 energy for 1 might. Just talked about how there's not a lot of 1 might. Well, here's one. When you play another unit, buff me. I don't like this card because basically she should already be 2 might because I'm spending 2 energy on her. So I have to then play another unit sometime for her to become a vanilla unit. To be fair, she does become better than vanilla because she does have a buff and there are other benefits that come with buff, especially in orange. So if you are playing a tried and true buff deck where you have tons of synergies, she maybe does go up, but if you're not playing that deck and you don't really have any ways to make buff units better, she will never be played. So I think that this is a build around C. Herald of Scales is 4 energy for 3 might. Your dragon's energy costs are reduced by 2 energy to a minimum of 1 energy. I do like that she does not have to be at a battlefield, so she can just sit back, be safe, and you then can have basically mana ramp. However, just for dragons. This lives and dies by how many good dragons you have and how many dragons there just are in the database of cards that we get to play with. Because if you are a dragon deck, this is really good. If you're not, this is not good at all. For right now, I don't think we have enough dragons to make a dragon deck, but in the future, I could see her being good, but in a very small situation. So I'll give it a build around C, and hopefully for the future, she will be better and kind of earn that C or maybe even go higher. Ginku Monk is 4 energy, 1 power for 4 might. When you play me, buff 2 other friendly units. This is a card that you definitely want to be playing in a buff deck because yes, she doesn't have buff herself, but she then gives 2 buffs to other friendly units. Of note though, if you don't have any other friendly units or maybe just either 1 friendly unit, this doesn't feel as good because it does go down because this does cost 4 energy and especially that power. So I don't think that she's great, but I would almost give her a build around C because if you are in a deck that wants her, she is good, but a lot of decks won't want to play her. Mountain Drake is 9 energy for 10 might. Well, here's a dragon that maybe pairs with Herald of Scales. However, I think that this card is very bad. You don't even really want to be playing this in a Herald of Scales deck because this is just not that good of a card. Yeah, you get 1 more might than the average rate, but this is so expensive. This is an F. Let's move on. Pirate's Haven is 3 energy for a gear that reads, when you ready a friendly unit, give it +1 might this turn. Of note, this shouldn't really help with your buff strategies because buff is like a token that gets +1 might. This is just +1 might. At least that's what my brain is thinking, because if this helps with buff strategies, then this goes way higher. So if I'm wrong about that, let me know in the comments down below. But I am going to read this that this does not help your buff strategies. It kind of is basically like an Anthem effect of everything on your side gets +1 might, but only on your turn. Well, only really when you exhaust it, unexhausted, but you are unexhausting on your turn. So this is way worse than just your traditional, +1 might Anthem effect. I don't really like this card. I don't think it's that good, but maybe there could be a future for it. So I'll just give it a undecided C. Spoils of War is 4 energy, 1 power for a reaction that says if an enemy unit has died this turn, this costs 2 energy less, draw 2. Let's just say it's 4 energy, 1 power, draw 2. That's not a card I want to be playing because that's pretty resource intensive just to really be up 1 card. But if this can get the -2 by something dying, which orange does like to fight, so it does kill a lot of things, then it's 2 energy, 1 power to draw 2 cards. That is pretty good, especially because orange doesn't have a ton of card draw. So I think that this will be deck dependent as well as color dependent of what you're pairing orange with. Because if you're pairing orange with something like blue, you're probably not going to play this card because blue just has other better card draw. But if you really want card draw and aren't playing any other card draw that is better than this, then maybe this is good. At the end of the day, orange doesn't really care that much about card draw, but card draw is nice. I'm going to give it a C. I feel like some decks might want this, but other decks just won't want this or just have better options to choose from. Unyielding Spirit is 1 energy, 1 power for a reaction. Prevent all spell and ability damage this turn. This card is so cheap and so efficient. And the effect is really, really good, especially depending on the colors that you are playing against, because in, red that has so much damage dealing effects, well, this just hoses that, for one turn. But this doesn't play around everything, this doesn't play around bounce or anything like that, or stun. So it is very narrow. And therefore, when something becomes that narrow, yes, the ceiling is very high, but the floor could be very low, where this could just be dead in hand a lot. Therefore, I feel like this is a sideboard card, and a very good sideboard card against red decks. So therefore, I'll give it a sideboard B. Wallop is 2 energy for an action. As you play this, you may spend a buff as an additional cost. If you do, ignore this spell's cost. Ready a unit. I want this to say, draw a card. Because this ability is good. Ready a unit is nice, and it could be pseudo free because you might just have to pay 1 buff rather than 2 energy. Even if you're paying the energy, 2 energy is not a lot. But this is a card that you are putting into your deck, then you do have to draw it, and then you do have to play it. And overall, I think this effect could be good, especially if you have a lot of good, big, beefy creatures that you're like, man, I really want this creature to have accelerate. Well, here you go. This is accelerate with hoops to jump through. But in a lot of decks, I just don't think that this is really worth a card. I think its ability is good, but not quite worth a card. If you have some really bomb cards that you are hoping to draw and then pair this, it could be good. I'm gonna give it a C, but I can definitely see being blown out with this card and be like, wow, Wallop was an A in this game. Wild Claw Shaman is 4 energy for 3 might. When you play me, you may spend a buff to buff me and ready me. I don't really like this card. I know Orange wants to be playing around with a lot of buffs, but this is just bad on rate. It's 4 energy for 3 might. And then there's hoops to jump through. I just feel like this is an F because I'm never really going to want to be putting this in my deck. Even if I want a lot of buff synergies, there's way better cards to be playing than this. Aniva is 7 energy, 2 power for 8 might. When I attack, deal 3 to all enemy units here. That ability is great. And you know what's even better with her? She doesn't have accelerate. So use Wallop on her, and then this just becomes even better. But that's obviously playing other cards, and I'm kind of joking, but I'm kind of serious. That does make Wallop even better. I think that this card is very good, especially if you have a way to accelerate this or unexhaust it, enter ready, whatever. This then goes way up because that attack ability is so good. But if you don't have any of those ways, you spend a lot of resources to play her, and then maybe your opponent can deal with her, bounce her to hand, or just outright destroy her somehow, and then you're kind of out. But I think that this is very good. I kind of want to give this an A because the attack ability is so strong, but I am a little afraid it's more B level because it doesn't get to always attack right away. But I'm going to give it an A because this is a very, very strong card. Carnivorous Snapvine is 5 energy, 2 power for 6 might. When you play me, choose an enemy unit at a battlefield. We deal damage equal to our mights to each other. So this is very similar to that might spell that we talked about before, but on a unit. I do like when that ability is on a unit more, but there are things to jump through because the enemy unit has to be at a battlefield. So maybe sometimes there's nothing at a battlefield, but this is better on rate because this is 5 energy for 6 might. So that means it's never terrible, but it does cost 2 power. So that is very resource intensive. Overall, I think I'm going to give this a B. I think that this is nice, powerful, hopefully removal attached to a unit that has a little bit to jump through, but not tons to jump through. Kraken Hunter is 3 energy, 2 power for 5 might with Accelerate, Assault 1, as well as you play me, you may spend any number of buffs as an additional cost. Reduce my cost by 1 power for each buff you spend. 3 energy for 5 might is fantastic rate. 2 power is a lot. Accelerate, always extra gravy on top of a card. Assault is very nice, especially because this hunter definitely wants to be aggressive because they have 5 might. And you can spend some buffs if you don't want to spend so many power. I think there's a lot of versatility, a lot of things going on, and this can be very, very aggressive, where if you are aggressive deck, I think that this will be a great card. If you're not an aggressive deck and more of a nutritious ramp style orange deck, I think that this power level does go down. But in an aggressive deck, I think that this is just a nice solid B. Lee Sin is 6 energy for 6 might with accelerates. Other buff friendly units at my battlefield have +2 might. The only time you want to play this is more or less if you are in a buff deck, because if you're not in a buff deck, then a 6 for 6 with accelerate is nothing you really want to be playing. I think that this is a nice B, so I will give it a build around B. Mistfall is 3 energy for gear that reads, when you buff a friendly unit, you may pay 1 power and exhaust this to ready it. I do like the effect of readying that unit that you're buffing, but there's a lot of hoops to jump through, and like with a lot of the gears, I just don't see this fitting into any really orange deck. I'm going to give it a D. Maybe it'll fit into something down the line, but right now it's a D. Overt Operations is 5 energy, 2 power for an action. For each friendly unit, you may spend its buff to ready it, then buff all friendly units. This is a build around. If you want buffs, if you have things to do with buffs, this is a very powerful card. This is a build around B. And we keep on seeing this with a lot of orange cards where, yes, buffs can just be intrinsically good, and maybe you play some buff cards just in any deck, but some things like this, that's like, hey, this is a build around. Do you want to be spending your buffs and just putting on buffs on everything? If so, you play this card and you will be happy. Primal Strength is 4 energy, 1 power for an action that says give a unit +7 might this turn. I know I keep on saying I like my combat tricks to be 1 or 2 energy, and this is a lot more than that. But we are in orange that does want to ramp. This is a great way to ramp and then use a overcosted combat trick in a more efficient way. And when I mean overcosted, I just mean more expensive. That's probably what I say of expensive combat trick. It is costed probably accurate because 7 might will just win any combat. Well, most any combat. I think that this is a good B, where this probably only goes into a deck that can kind of ramp into it to make an expensive combat trick feel less expensive. Kiana is 4 energy, 1 power for 4 might with deflect. When I conquer, draw 1 or channel 1 rune exhausted. She is fantastic. This is an easy A. Deflect helps her stay around longer, and then that conquer ability of draw 1 or channel 1 rune exhausted, that means you get to choose, hey, would I rather have a card or would I rather ramp? Either one's great, but you get to pick the one that you most want to do that time. And especially in orange, where 4 might is good, but not super great, where you can buff her, you can do a lot of other things to make sure that she will hopefully stick around and get you more and more advantage. This is an A, and this is very, very good. This is one of the best orange cards that we have seen. Sabotage is 1 energy, 1 power. Choose an opponent. They reveal their hand, choose a non-unit card from it, and recycle that card. It can only be a non-unit card. That's a big detriment because there are a lot of units and a lot of decks are playing a lot of units. So this means that the power level of this card does go down, but there are some great spells to find with this and some pretty good gears to find with this as well. 1 energy is very cheap, but that 1 power makes this not a, in my mind, broken card, because these types of effects are way better early game, like turn 1, turn 2. But on turn 1, turn 2, exhausting one of your runes to the bottom of your deck is a lot higher of a cost than on turn 5 or 6 when Sabotage does go down. So therefore, I do like that this costs 1 power because I think that this kind of mitigates how powerful this card is. Overall, I do feel like I will need to play the game more and more to see how good this effect is. But for right now, it costing a power and that you cannot choose a unit for your opponent to discard makes this seem like a C level card where sometimes maybe you want to play this, sometimes maybe you don't, which I kind of like that because I don't like when these effects are just like evergreen of, hey, every single orange deck you are playing discard cards and that is it. Udyr is 6 energy, 1 power for 6 might. That reads, spend my buff, choose one you've not chosen this turn. Deal 2 to a unit at a battlefield, stun a unit at a battlefield, ready me, or give me ganking this turn. Those are all very good abilities, especially that you get to choose whichever one is better at that time in this scenario in that board state. However, he doesn't come in with any buffs. You have to buff him with some other cards or abilities however way you can. We are in orange, so that hoop is a little easier to jump through because orange does have a lot of buffs. And you only do have to spend the buff. You don't have to spend energy or power, but you are spending the buff that is on him, so therefore he's not getting that +1 might, as well as maybe you have some effects that, make your buff units even stronger. With all that being said, I still do think that he is powerful, but he is purely a buff build around, and let's give him a B for a nice build around score. Volibear is 12 energy, 2 power for 10 might with shield 3, tank, as well as when your opponent moves to a battlefield other than mine, draw 1. Those abilities of shield, tank, and the card draw are fantastic because basically he is this humongous giant. Just look at this art. He is a giant that your opponent might not want to tussle with. But if they don't tussle with it, if they go to the different battlefields, you get to draw a card. That is fantastic. But he is so expensive. 12 energy is so expensive. We are, though, in orange, which does want to ramp. I feel like the only way you're playing this card is if you are in a dedicated ramp deck or have ways to cheat units into play. If you're not doing one of those two things, you are not playing him. But if you are doing one of those two things, this is a B. It is very strong. And the only way that it's not an A is because it costs so much. Warwick is 6 energy, 1 power for 5 might. I enter ready. When I attack, kill all damaged enemy units here. Well, there are cards in orange that I may or may not have graded that well. I kind of don't remember, that say deal 1 or something like that to all enemies at a battlefield. Those go way up if you are playing Warwick, and almost is like this nice build around. Where at the floor, this is not that bad of a card. It's a 6 energy, 5 might that enters ready, and if you have ways to just throw around 1 damage here or there, Warwick goes way higher. All that is to be said, you do have to build around things to make this very good. I'm going to give this a C at the end of the day. I do want this to be very good because I do like Warwick. Dazzling Aurora is 9 energy, 2 power. At the end of your turn, reveal cards from the top of your main deck until you reveal a unit. Play it ignoring its cost and recycle the rest. This card is fantastic. We all know it's fantastic. It's an easy A. It is one of the pillars of Riftbound and pairs very well with Woolly Bear and other extremely high cost units that you want to play and ramp into or cheat into play with Dazzling Aurora. This is an A. Have fun playing it. It's going to be a lot of fun. Dead Bloom Predator is 8 energy, 2 power with 8 might. With Deflect, you may play me to an occupied enemy battlefield. This card is fantastic. It goes very well with Dazzling Aurora, especially that you could just play it to enemy battlefield and more or less be like, well, I'm going to eat this unit that you have there trying to camp out there. If it wasn't for Dazzling Aurora, maybe this would go down because of the cost and everything. But with that, with its effect, even with its cost, it is still an 8 might unit. So that is beefy, kind of worth spending 8 energy and 2 power. All around, it's an A. Misfortune is 5 energy, 1 power for 5 might with Accelerate, ganking, as well as the first time I move each turn, you may ready something else that's exhausted. That's a lot of abilities for a pretty good statted unit. Accelerate's always great, ganking's always great, and to ready something, there's just a lot of things going on that makes this a very good card, and that's why it's just going to be a B. Here is the orange seal of strength. I have been giving these C's, kind of saying, do you want this? Do you want to ramp and stuff like that? Well, here's the ramp color that you could be like, this is so good in orange, but this is only ramping power, not energy. And in my mind, orange really wants to ramp more energy than power. So at the end of the day, I'm still just going to give this a C. Our last orange card is Set. 5 energy, 1 power for 4 might. When I'm played and when I conquer, buff me. Spend my buff, give me +4 might this turn. If you put an extra buff on Set, either with his ability or a different ability, well, then you just spend that other buff, and then he gets +4 might this turn, which really makes him way better to go in, brawl and conquer like what Set wants to do. I think this is a great card for orange, what orange definitely wants to be doing, and I'm going to give it a B. Overall, orange has a lot of really good cards, and I know I did kind of give some cards more of a build around gray that maybe was a little bit lower, but that's because it really lives and dies by, well, how much ramping are you doing, or how much buffing are you doing is how good these cards are, kind of like with blue with the hidden mechanic. Orange seems powerful, especially some of like the Aurora and other cards like that. But that's going to be it for me today. Next time we'll look at another color from the set. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I will see you all next time.